I was kinda hesitant when I started playing Pacific Drive. The concept of the game had interested me, but the talk about the terrible save system was concerning. And I'm glad to report that the saves are not as terrible as I heard online. And the game's story was quick enough to grab my attention to make up for any issues encountered. So let's talk about Pacific Drive. You are the driver, and that is what you will be called the entire game. One day, you're making some sort of a delivery outside the Olympic Exclusion Zone, and you get pulled into it, straight through the wall. Dazed and confused, you come across a car which turns out to be a bit more unique than most regular cars, as it seems to be some sort of a mysterious being known as a remnant. Beings that attach to humans and then slowly drive them insane, only for the person to run off into the deepest part of the exclusion zone and never to be seen again. Meaning you kinda have two goals in the game. Find a way to survive your car, which is also your only safe haven when traversing the zone, and find out what is happening in the zone by figuring out the mystery and maybe even find a way out. And you do this by driving and fixing up your car. You get a safe place in a garage in the most peaceful part of the peninsula. In the garage, you upgrade your car and knowledge by unlocking several nicely sized tech trees. You repair your car, you change out tires, change out doors, make your car better, and even attach things to it like extra storage and gas tanks. Here you can heal your character, you can put gas in the tank, and you can charge the car's battery while you plot your course out into the exclusion zone to gather resources and find answers to what in the world is going on in here. And you will do this with the help of 3 characters who happen to still live in the zone long after it has been evacuated. The 3 characters are really well written and voice acted. I came to enjoy their different personalities and their perspectives on what was happening within the zone, from uppy scientific but rather haughty observation to Tobias's theories around cryptids and ghosts, and then the quiet Francis, who rarely added his thoughts but with time became the person I kinda connected with the most. And as you progress through the different areas of the zone, you get to learn more about each of them, from their history to what they want to do in the future. And to add to their stories and the story of the zone, there are also occasional optional audio tapes you can pick up from time to time, which let you listen to a radio podcast detailing a reporter's investigation into the peninsula, giving another really interesting perspective. But while all the story is happening, you will be driving. So let's talk about the main gameplay loop. While you do fix up the car in the garage, most of the time you will actually be out on expeditions. You see, the game is split into multiple smaller zones, and each time you go to a zone, what resources you can find there are gonna be randomized. The reason for this is actually explained in the story, which I quite like. As you go through a zone, you will have limited time to stay there, except if it's a story quest area, then you will have as much time as you need. But when going through a zone in a regular way, you don't know how long you will have. Eventually you will get a warning that a storm is closing in, and then you actually have a pretty good time to finish up whatever you're doing and get out of the zone. But if you are caught up in the storm, you will fail your expedition and lose everything you got collected. But you will be thrown back to the garage with your car in probably a pretty bad shape. As you progress through the story, you will start going to zones further and further away into the peninsula, meaning to get to your destination, you might have to travel through 3 to 4 zones to get there. And this is where people started getting really worried about the saves. So let's talk about the saves. Now, while you can only choose to save manually in the garage, the game also saves each time you go through a loading screen, meaning every time you move from a zone to zone. But apparently on release this wasn't quite clear, so many people seem to have believed you would lose all of your progress back to the garage. And with some of your trips out going through multiple zones taking a while, that is understandably something people were not comfortable with. But after a bit of experimentation, I found out the game will always save in the manual save slot you last made. So what I would do, I would make 2 save slots. One in case I wanted to go all the way back to the garage, and then a second one that I knew the game would be updating. This allowed me to save myself in cases like when I ended up upside down in a ditch, and the only option the game was giving me was abandoning the run. Instead, I could simply load my latest save, and that took me to the start of that zone. So as long as I would not decide to abandon the run or progress further, I had that save ready so I could get back to the start of the area I had been in, saving myself from losing a lot of progress. Also knowing that each zone saved as I entered it, it meant if I needed to step away from the game, I either would not lose too much progress, or I could simply take a few minutes to get myself to the next area or back to the garage, or just pause the game if needed. You usually won't spend a lot of time in a zone, meaning there's probably not going to be more than 20 minutes between your save states. Still, this is a limitation that is good to keep in mind if this is a type of a save system that just doesn't work for you. But overall, I really enjoyed the game. I liked the random generation in the zones as I went to them. I enjoyed collecting things to decorate my car, from stickers to paints and bobbleheads to stick on my dash. I found the music to be absolutely lovely, and in the calmer outer zones it was really pleasant just going around, gathering resources while listening to the in-game radio, with its original music. And sometimes some random voices from the zone's past would actually come across the radio, as sort of echoes giving a tiny peek into the life of the peninsula before disaster happened. And while some moments are really relaxing, others are really tense. You see, you're not alone in the zones. The zones are full of these anomalies. They come in a lot of different varieties. Things like flying machines that try to abduct anything they see. That includes you and your car. Floating balls that steal your stuff, which led me to having to actually jump out of my car from time to time to try to get the various parts of my car back, because it was stealing things I had attached to the car. There are various ground threats that can mess up your car, so you kind of have to try to drive around them, or at times just accept that you are gonna take some damage. There are things throwing acid, and there are these balls of debris that kind of just fly around, and if you land on your car, they will mess it up. Overall, it took me just over 22 hours to finish the game, and I really enjoyed it. While some of the very long drives to the final missions got a bit annoying, because I had to go through so many zones to get there, the interesting anomalies, the stunning landscape which gets more and more twisted as you go deeper into the zone, the pleasant music and the great dialogue kept me interested throughout. So if you're looking for a rather unique game about driving, Pacific Drive might just be the game for you. But what do you think? Does this game sound interesting to you? Is the save system a deal breaker? Have you tried Pacific Drive and what do you think? Let's talk about it in the comments, and while you're down there, do the likey subscribey things. But in the end, all I want to say is takk fyrir að horfa og eigðu yndislegan dag.